Tony. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Fundraisers Friday on the amazing nonprofit show. Welcome back, Tony.
Thank you so much, Julia. Happy Friday. Another week's gone by and just thrilled to be here.
Just like that. Well,
That fast.
it's so fast. We decided, you and I, that we were going to kind of pull in maybe one episode a month on Fundraisers Friday, a Q&A. You and I get a lot of questions. I've been stopped on airplanes, running across to the supermarket from my house. I mean, people are always asking me questions. I'm sure the same thing happens to you.
Yep, you're just in the store trying to buy some vegetables and people have questions.
Yeah. And it's not, is this zucchini fresh? It's like, what do I do when my board doesn't show up? I mean, I get these questions and it's like, well, grab a chair. This isn't like a quick answer. But anyway, so we thought this would be fun to kind of take some of the questions that we get and then, discuss them. You and I don't always have the same approach or even think the same way about some of these things, which I think is super fabulous and a lot of fun. So,
For sure.
so this will be great. A lot of super fabulous things happen and fun things happen because of our presenting sponsors, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, our new Friday shows, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, joined by the amazing Tony Bell, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy. Very, very excited to be on this journey with you, Tony. I do believe that you are truly one of the amazing nonprofit thought leaders in our nation. And so it's always just like astonishing to me that we get to call you our own. And so I'm delighted you're here. Okay, my friend, are you ready for the first big question?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's see. How important is it for a nonprofit to have a donor gift policy?
How important is it can be pretty important. And why I say pretty important is that, at least in my experience, you may find yourself in situations or scenarios where someone bought a ticket for a gala and now they can't attend and they want a refund. So what is your gift policy for folks that want to attend, purchase a table or seats and don't attend? What is your policy when a donor knocks on your front door and the money that they want to donate comes from the porn industry? What is your policy around that? And I'm talking about things that I've actually experienced. What do you do when you have a major gift from an individual donor, and now all of a sudden they're under indictment for something, or being researched by the government? What do you do in those scenarios? So gift policies are super important at all levels, covering all things. And part of that is, of course, to protect the organization, but also to provide your team members, your development professionals, with kind of the guardrails around accepting gifts and what the refund policy might look like for certain gifts and related to certain activities. So I think that a gift policy is really important. You can think of it as kind of like prevention, right? It's, if something should come up, this will help prevent you from being in an uncomfortable situation or having to scramble to come up with a decision or a way in which to communicate how you're going to handle that particular gift scenario.
Right. Tony, I was thinking about, and now that this was gender specific, so now it's probably not called this, but back in the day, for naming rights and for big donor investments, you would find in the legal documents something called a bad boy clause. And that
Mhm.
would be if somebody did something wrong, at what level? If they were um, under investigation, that's one level, and if they were found guilty, that's another level. But how would you, like, say, remove a name from a building? Or how, I mean, these are like big things, right? I mean, like,
Mhm.
your theater has this huge, XYZ family name or person's name. I mean, not like easy things that are kind of easy to um, kind of put under the carpet, right? I mean, it's like very public. And I think this is a big question, especially for those organizations where we call it the vice tax. You said porn, but it could be alcohol, it could be
Right.
tobacco, it could be firearms now, right?
Mhm.
Because of gun violence in our country. And so it's a tough conversation because generally these folks come with a lot of money.
Well, and like I said, it kind of helps you around kind of risk prevention, so that you're not scrambling to figure out how to manage some of these scenarios. And what you mentioned, Julia, is really critical, especially when we talk about those big gifts, right? Those
Yeah.
naming right gifts, those super large gifts that are transformative for a lot
Yes.
of organizations. So it's in your best interest. Uh, in terms of being fiscally responsible for the organization to have these types of documents in place. And I mentioned something as simple as seats to a gala because some folks are going to want that refund. So how are you going to man? Some are going to say, "Oh, I can't attend, and that's okay. I wanted to give to the organization anyway." But there are
Right.
people that are going to say, "I want my money back."
Right.
or
Right.
you have a potential headliner at your event. Well,
Yeah.
something happens, the headliner doesn't show up, I'm at the
Yep.
event. I paid under the assumption that I was going to see this act that I'm super passionate about. That didn't happen. I want a refund. So
Mhm.
there are people that are going to think that way. And so it's just best that you go ahead and have the policies in place.
So then let me take this to another level. Is this the sort of thing that is an internal document, or would this policy be found on your website? Or like how transparent or communicative should an organization be about these policies?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know that there's a standard of practice around that. I don't know that I've gone to a website, for example, of an organization and seen a gift policy published like that.
Okay.
I think it's something that you primarily keep internally, and you bring it out and discuss it as needed with
Okay.
the potential donor. So
Okay.
I would say that. With larger gift donors, you're going to want to discuss some of this up front. And I think
Okay.
it's appropriate to do that.
Okay.
Uh, and there's definitely language that you can use in invitations and stuff at the gala, like
Yeah.
talent may change, da, 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 I
Right.
mean, there
Yeah.
are disclaimers you can use.
Yeah.
But I would say that based on my experience and what I've seen, these documents typically reside in-house,
Okay.
and you pull them out and discuss them and review them, as needed.
That's needed. Okay, good. Well, I think this is, something that unfortunately you probably don't think about until you need to think about it. So, yeah, great answers and great discussion. Let's go on to our next question. And this is a one that I get asked a lot. Should development staff attend board meetings? And, you know, a lot of times I hear this and it's kind of like, what? People will be like, I never thought about this. And it's like, oh my gosh, tell me what you think.
Yeah, I don't believe that development staff should attend board meetings on a regular basis. I
Okay.
do think that development staff should be provided an opportunity to present to the board what's going on, what's the
Yeah.
state of development for our organization. When
Mhm.
I look at when I look at kind of the where our dollars are coming from, right? Because we do an annual plan, and we know that certain percentage might be grants, certain percentage will be, events, individual donors. I should be able to share with the board, we're doing really well in these lanes, but this lane we're underperforming. And, and giving them an opportunity to kind of lean in and help support you in that particular area that might need some additional attention. So I don't believe that development staff should attend every board meeting. I do think that perhaps quarterly, they should have an opportunity to present to the board, what they're working on and what's going on. I also think it's really meaningful for development staff to have that face time with the board, to be able to have that visibility and that recognition, if you will, in front of the board. So not all the time, but I would say at least quarterly. And then again, depending on your board frequency, your board may only meet quarterly, depending on the organization. There are some boards that only meet quarterly. So maybe it's just, once a year they're providing an update or something. Whether that's face-to-face in real life or face-to-face via Zoom. But I think the face-to-face is important for your development team and for your board.
Yeah. I take a little different approach on this. And I think that this kind of goes back to what is the primary focus of your board, right? So if you're a fundraising board versus a governance board, then there's some nuances there. But pretty much every one of the 1.8 million nonprofits in our country have some sort of fundraising arm that they have to address, right? So for me, I feel like that development leadership at least needs to be at every board meeting, because it's like having a sales meeting without your sales manager. It doesn't really translate. Now, I think you could say, they're going to be there for a portion of the meeting, so that they're not there for, however long, or for dealing with things that don't necessarily impact their work. But for most organizations, it seems to me, Tony, that a lot of these board members can open doors and make introductions and connect to corporate, investors and sponsors. So I kind of feel like they should be there. And I know that, to your point, it's sometimes a little bit overkill, but I just feel like boards don't understand enough about what it takes to be a development officer, that it's relationship based, and that, to your point, they want to be able to see one another and have that FaceTime. And so I don't know. I'm a little bit of a stickler on that one. Sorry.
No, I totally support and agree with where you're coming from there. And I'm glad that you reminded me. It's not like they have to attend the entire board meeting. My mentality was, you go in the room, you shut the door, no one leaves until the agenda's over. So you're right about that. They certainly could pop in and give a quick update and pop back out when other business needs to be discussed or voted on. So so I mean, it's again depending on the norms and the organizational culture. It doesn't hurt to have them at every board meeting.
Well, and I think that we're so imperiled by this horrible stat of the average development director only lasting 19 months in their job. And so we've got to be thinking about, what that looks like. And I don't know, maybe attending those meetings is part of that stress that's like pushing them out, because I have been as a board member at meetings where the development director gets called on the carpet, and it's horrible. I mean, it's not always a love fest, right? And
it's very true.
That's dicey too. But anyway, well, good question. And again, we need to be thinking about these things more significantly. Okay, let's go to our next question. We have a give or get. Does the development staff monitor this? Hall room monitor.
Ooh, and so we have a give or get. So in my experience, development staff have always monitored this because typically they're the ones kind of tracking the dollars that are coming in, and taking that data and putting it into reports. So I definitely think that it's a responsibility of development staff to monitor the give or get. It is not the development staff's responsibility to police it. So if a board member is underperforming in the give or get category, then that is a conversation that the board chair needs to have with the board member to discuss the reasons why, what can they do to help, do they need additional resources or tools in order to meet the give or get obligation. So again, I totally agree, monitoring should take place within the development team, but any conversations related to board performance around give or get should be a conversation that's had between the board member and the board chair.
Okay, I agree with you on that. I think that's absolutely the right way to go. And I like how you used that clarification between monitoring and policing. Now, let me get your catcher's mitt up, and I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball.
Okay.
Do you think that this should be public in the sense of at the board meeting? A lot of times you have board requirements, and it may be like a spreadsheet will be passed out that says something like, how many meetings they've attended, if have they attended a tour, have they done this, da 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 da, including that give or get. How private or how public should that be within the board environment? I'm not saying you put it on the website. I'm saying just within the board group.
Yeah, I think it depends on the culture of the organization, either the way it exists or the culture that you're trying to create around how you're going to manage communicating where folks are with their give or get. Because even if we say it, and I've seen it done both ways, where it's not reported publicly and then it is reported publicly, meaning kind of in the agenda of the board meeting. So there,
Right.
it'll show, like you said, attendance, which I see pretty often around, at board meetings, whether it would be included in that document or not. I'm just trying to think about, again, what that does to the culture, and then kind of realizing too, for some organizations, they have to operate in the sunshine. So if they're putting that kind of information in a board document, that board document then does become public record for anyone to take a look at. So I'm not sure how I feel about, I think we should celebrate when people reach the milestone, right? Right. So, so we celebrate it, and maybe we celebrate it based on benchmarks. This board meeting, we're going to celebrate Julia's at 50% of her give or get.
Wow.
Way to go, Julia. Right.
And
we're celebrating that you're at 100%.
I love that. I have never thought of that. That's why you are Mr. Nonprofit, because that's genius. I'm thinking that you were a kindergarten teacher in your previous life, because it motivates people to, enjoy that success and to celebrate it. And it's a little bit of a poke, but it's not negative enough to cause disengagement. And plus, you said this early on when I first met you, and it's really struck with me, is that a lot of times boards deal with such tough things, they never get into the mode of celebrating a success.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have that I don't want to say negative, but when it's not like a positive thing, you don't feel great about showing up for the meeting, right?
Yeah, well, you don't want to create unnecessary punitive experiences for your board members, because and this is part of what I say all the time. Your board members are volunteers. We have to remember that board members are volunteers, but volunteers with the highest level of accountability to the organization. So we want to minimize any occurrences where we're making our board members feel bad, or our actions are kind of punitive, and
Right.
then they're not going to want to show up at the next meeting.
Right. And that's the thing. I think it builds a subtle disengagement. It really does. And then before you know it, you've got people, and again, I hear this all the time. I'm sure you do. My board just sits there. They won't do anything, and it's like, how do I motivate them? And I think this could be one of those pieces of it, for good or for
Mm-hmm.
bad. I
Mm-hmm.
love that, Tony. Brilliant. Okay, well, let's go to the next question.
Okay.
Should the development director, chief of staff, chief financial officer, chief executive officer, or chief marketing officer, DD, COS, CFO, CEO, CMO, be voting members of the board? So
No,
basically, paid staff, right? I mean, you're looking at this and you're saying, this is paid staff. No.
no, they really should not be voting members of the board. I mean, I don't even know what else to say about that other than just no.
No, I agree. No, I think they, definitely we want their input and we want their feedback and we want their attendance where it's warranted. We addressed that with, I think, the very first question today. But no, this is a strict line that should be separated. Paid staff has
Mm-hmm.
no business being a voting member of the board.
Mm-hmm.
It's as we say in my family, no que bueno.
Not going to happen.
No, not going to happen. And it's just really shouldn't be even a consideration. Now, if they were once an employee and they've left, or they've retired or whatever, or maybe you put them on a committee where there's no fiduciary, issue, then get them involved that way. But definitely not in terms of voting. It's just a really, I think it would be, frankly, a huge red flag for a lot of
Yeah,
organizations.
yeah. I don't think it would pass the ethics test
No.
around kind of ethical behavior. And I'm trying to. You see my face is like what? I'm trying to think of a scenario where the answer should be different. Like I'm trying to think of a scenario where the answer to that question should be yes, and I just can't think of one.
Mhm. No, and I suspect when this question came in, and it was emailed in. No, it came through social media. So
Mm,
I didn't have a dialogue with this person. I'm just assuming it's a small organization and they're thinking, oh, well, this paid professional can give us good advice, and then they can, be a strong steward of the organization via board leadership. But you can be a strong advocate, or thought leader, but you shouldn't have a vote. Right? I mean, just
right. No, absolutely. Yeah. No
yeah,
voting at the board meetings.
no, not at all. It's really interesting, and I think too, that should probably be in a policy. When you look about your board bylaws, that should probably be a standard thing that's in there, right? Like,
I'm glad. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that up because that did come to mind also is that, that should be very clearly defined in your bylaws,
yeah,
the definition of a board member and who votes
exactly, yeah.
should all
Well,
be there.
yeah, it's really an interesting thing. And these are fun questions. This is great for us to get, some feedback from folks. If you have a question, you can email us at info@americannonprofitacademy.com. You can reach back out to us on social media, and then we will cultivate these questions and then probably have more than enough for one episode every month. But we're always interested to see what folks are thinking about, what they're challenged by. And Tony and I have different approaches sometimes, most of the time, which I think is great and healthy to kind of hear what we each think about. So thank you, Tony. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, very, very much so. And then, just real quickly going back to the first question about, a giving policy, there are so many templates available online. So if you need a draft to start with, turn to your friend Google, and you'll be able to find many good examples online to help you kind of formulate a gift policy that makes sense for your organization and the types of donors that you typically interact with.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And I think too that, we oftentimes in the nonprofit sector, we're working so hard and we've got our heads down, and we don't have that opportunity to see what the best practice is necessarily. And so to go back out, and digitally research that is, I think, a good thing. A good thing.
Well, and one of the things we're not great at sometimes too is risk management, and and being prepared, for difficult scenarios. And so again, that particular policy will really help you in terms of your risk management.
Right. Yeah, it's critical because it's really brutal when something like this comes down and you're not prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really brutal. And so you don't want to be sucking the oxygen out of the room and making things more difficult than they need to be. Tony Bell, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy. Again, I'm Julia Patrick with the American Nonprofit Academy. We have amazing sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that really stand beside Tony and I on this special episode of Fundraisers Friday. And so we want to make sure we extend our gratitude. Hey, it's been a busy week. We've got a lot more busy weeks ahead of us, don't we, my friend?
Yes, we do, my friend. And it's year end for a lot of folks. So, much gratitude to our viewers and listeners that take the time to tune into the nonprofit show, because we know limited bandwidth. Again, for a lot of folks, it's, year end, and Giving Tuesday just happened. So folks were working really hard on Giving Tuesday, and hopefully, feeling good about the results of that for their organization. So just, a huge shout out and thanks not only to our sponsors, but to our viewers and listeners for leaning in.
It's true. And there's a lot we need to lean into. Tony Bell, you are a gem. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us on this special Friday of Ask and Answered. And yes, if you've got questions, send them our way, and we'll toss them up and see what comes down, because it's really been a lot of fun to have this robust discussion. Hey, everybody, as we end each and every episode of the Nonprofit Show, we want to remind you to stay well so you can do well.